Hello and welcome to Wealth and Wisdom with the Market Guys. I'm James DeGiorgia.
And I'm Jeff Carbaz. On today's show, we're going to discuss fast-growing market for Latin American foods. Joining us here today is Fernando Leonzo. Fernando is president and CEO of Presto. Prior to that, Fernando worked for almost a decade in the financial industry, initially working as a sales executive with regional brokerage firms and later for major clearinghouses on Wall Street. Fernando also successfully operated a record import and distribution business that distributed records through retailers in the U.S., Mexico, and Colombia. Welcome to the show, Fernando.
Welcome, thank you.
Well, the reason why we asked you to join us is that it's an inescapable reality that the Latin food market as a sector within the food area has to be one of the fastest growing areas. The demand for spending in this area was $800 billion this year, and by 2012 it's projected at $1.2 trillion. Yep. So if an investor is looking to invest in a particular in this particular sector, in the food sector,
sure,
it would be just lunacy not to kind of focus in on some of the fastest growing areas, and this is among them.
Our company, actually, Presto Food and Beverage Inc., what we're doing is we're building a company in which we have proprietary brands. Obviously, we have our brands, Solmaya brands, but we're also in the process of building the company by acquisition. We're looking to acquire small regional brands, companies that are, I guess you could refer to them as mom and pop type businesses, spread out throughout the United States. And outside of the biggest players domestically, the only other way an investor or somebody who'd want to participate in the food and beverage business for the Hispanic market here in the United States, you'd have to basically look at some of the ADRs from Mexico and from Brazil and Colombia and stuff like that. And those are obviously giant players. But most of the companies, I would say 99% of the companies here in the United States domestically are private companies. I mean, there's virtually no public company that caters towards the Hispanic market when it comes to food and beverages. Even Goya being the #1 company.
And yet demand is exploding for these type of foods.
Sure, but that relates with the population growth. I mean, obviously, just last week, or was it that the census announced, based on their 2007 numbers, that the Hispanic population in the United States is 15% and growing, and it's projected to be at least a quarter of the population in about 30 years. Those are trends that you just cannot avoid, and obviously in places like here in Florida, places like up in the Northeast in New York, and of course Texas and California, the traditional states, they're making a significant percentage of the population.
So can you give us a little bit of background and how you got involved and how you've grown the company? That'd be great to get that. Because leaving Wall Street to go for a beverage company
right?
is pretty unusual.
Yeah, exactly. It all started, obviously, you're at home and your mother says to you, well, why don't they make this, I mean, this is something that's, it would be more convenient if they packaged it this way. So since it didn't exist, I got the whole curiosity started. Yes, you're right. I mean, I did work on Wall Street for about 7.5 years, and after the last bubble, tech bubble in 2000, I decided to start something from scratch and to build something, and that's what I did. My partner joined me shortly after I founded the company, and it was 2001. Now it's 7 years. In the business that we have, and we launched our first brand in 2004. And this year alone, we're basically projected to grow at about a 300% year-over-year growth from 2007.
So in your day-to-day, I take it you're out beating the bushes, seeing stores, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I do everything. I try to get out there as often as I can. Besides the fact of doing corporate-related things, now we're in the process of actually becoming a public company. We've been privates for the better since we started the company, and as a public company, obviously, as you can imagine, a fully reporting company with the audits and so forth, it does take some of my time. But nonetheless, what I personally enjoy most is going out there and touching, feeling the marketplace, and I can relate to the mom and pop little store, whether it be in New York or whether it be a store out in Houston and so forth, and watching it grow literally day by day, because we're adding new stores every single day.
Have you studied any other business models? Because obviously there's some pretty great examples of some beverage companies like Vitamin Water and Nantucket Nectar guys that kind of grew their businesses from nothing to huge businesses.
Yes. I mean, we try to incorporate a little bit of everything, understanding that we're dealing with two dynamics here. Obviously, we're dealing with a domestic market, so to speak, in which we can use those kind of models like the vitamin waters and Nantuckets. But then we're also dealing with the dynamic of a new class or immigration class of people, group of people that sometimes those tactics can work, and then sometimes they cannot. So we have to sort of balance out and know that the way we brand our products, how we present it to them, it has to be unique to that market segment.
Is your advertising any different than a traditional American beverage company? I mean, are you more word of mouth? Do you focus on Univision and as an approach?
Actually, what we do is we do what we refer to as a grassroots effort. And to give you an example, a brand like Silk that does soy milk. I mean, that company was probably around at least half a dozen years before you ever saw an ad. And when they were well on their way of making a couple $100 million in sales. We're not there yet, so our efforts are geared towards real grassroots efforts in which we participate in, local sports leagues in which the markets that we have presence in. We do a lot of participations in the festivals. Obviously, when the summers come along, we participate in the festival. So it's very grassroots, and of course, the tried and true method of sampling. I mean, we do a lot of sampling, and in that sense, we do copy companies like the Vitamin Waters, which try to get the brand exposure out to the consumer in a way that a lot of other Hispanic food companies domestically and from Latin America don't readily do that much. I mean, they do some in-store samplings, but they don't really heavily emphasize branding. It's more about the product than the brand. So we're focusing more on the brand.
When you fight to get the shelf space in the store, and you get it, and I noticed that they had your target is to get 5,000 retail locations by the end of this year.
Yep.
Okay. How do you support the inventory requirements of that?
Well, what we do is, I mean, our model is based upon, and if I can go back to real quickly about the demographics, one of the advantages of the Hispanic market is the fact that you have about 40% of it residing in 5 metro regions, starting in Los Angeles being the first, New York second, Miami third, Houston fourth, and Chicago fifth. And then you have 70% of the Hispanic market in 5 states. So that sort of gives an advantage of having the concentration of a population that's growing fast and, of course, dispersing into other states, like in the Southeast. But it allows us to build our brand and our infrastructure in certain areas. So right now our model is to build our distribution network, if you will, among the top 5 metro regions. And by doing that, we have what we call master distributors or FOB hubs, in which that's where inventory is sent, paid for obviously by those distributors, and then from there we channel it out through independent distributors or sales force that goes out and puts out the product into local stores. So yeah, right now we're in about 2,000 retail locations, and we feel that we can easily be in 5,000 by the end of this year.
Great. I guess I want to follow up and talk about expanding the line. Now, and you talked about rolling up mom and pop operations. Is it your business plan to stick with beverages, or are you looking to expand into?
Well, the brand has to correlate with a certain type of product. So, in other words, our model differs from, for example, like the Goya model, which basically has Goya in every single product that they sell, whether it be a beverage or a can of beans, or from our standpoint. Our brands will be focused on a certain type of segment, whether it be a beverage or a food item. And in this particular case, it just happens to be that we started off with the beverage, in which with our brands, Sol Maya brands, basically that is geared. It's a dairy-based line of beverages, shelf-stable. And so anything that would come under the Sol Maya umbrella would have to be dairy-based. And then, of course, the company that we're in talks with is an all-natural juice type line. So that gives us the leverage to be able to have not just one category of drinks, but in this case, dairy and non-dairy based. But and then if we were to look at a food item, we would most likely not put them under those brands, if you will.